Hi, and welcome to episode 155 of the 4Ps, and let's start off with just a little bit of gratitude. Thank you to you for watching, for subscribing, for reading the 4Ps each and every week. I welcome and appreciate all feedback and really want this to be better for you each week as a newsletter, for our community, just giving you more of what you're interested in.
The 4Ps. Professional. Political. Practical. Personal.
As I think back upon this past weekend, Mother's Day weekend, it really impacted me a lot more than I thought it was going to. Seeing photos, pictures, videos shared across social media platforms this past weekend of family gatherings, time spent together. For many of us, it was the first time that we've been together with our families in months or even more. Personally, I'd only seen my sister once since the entire pandemic began. It was a socially distant outdoor drive-by last summer. So to have her and my parents or in-laws at our house for Mother's Day, it was both a little bit unsettling, but also began to feel normal again. Something personal. Our allergies are getting worse, if you couldn't tell by the nasal tin in my voice. But not just mine, not just yours, all of ours. As a collective people, as a planet. Growing up, I had seasonal allergies, obviously. Pollen, ragweed, and more, usually spanning from early spring through late fall. I remember others having issues too. I even had a few friends who got allergy shots. But it either wasn't as widely discussed or it just wasn't as debilitating. Nowadays, it seems like everyone has some degree of allergic symptoms. Coughing, sneezing, drip, runny nose, sore throats. It's almost impossible to have a conversation without the topic of allergies coming up. And with the increased pervasiveness of, or just the severity of people's symptoms now being even confused with COVID and requiring tests, the question is, did a year indoors actually make us even more sensitive to allergies? According to the scientists, the trend is very real. Allergy risk is getting worse over time. The length and intensity of pollen seasons are growing, largely due to climate change. And as the planet continues to warm, more misery is in store. The pollen count is increasing year over year, resulting in a greater burden on our health as well as the economy. The cost of treating nasal allergies already tops $3.4 billion per year in the U.S. alone. Humans are changing the pollen production of our planet because of increased concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and burning fossil fuels. When carbon dioxide levels go up, plants actually grow larger and produce more pollen. Right? Then the warming induced by higher concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere actually causes the planet to heat up, which leads to warmer winters and then earlier springs, giving plants a head start on pollen production. More pollen production and over a longer period of time makes it worse. Some estimates show that pollen counts of all varieties will double over the next 20 years. In some parts of the country, could be even worse, depending on what the pathway for our greenhouse gas emissions takes. I feel for our kids, as it's getting worse generationally as well. Children need some exposure to allergens for their immune systems to learn to fight them. But since many kids have spent or have had limited exposure to outdoor allergens over the last year, wearing masks and staying indoors more, they may have stronger allergic reactions than they've had in the past. For now, there's really not much we can do specifically except treatment and balance and prevention of bigger global environmental issues. There's no prevention except to continue to focus on improving the way we treat our environment and the planet. something professional. And those of you watching this may know who Rand Fishkin is. He's one of those people in my industry whose knowledge and insights are just always a must-read, must-follow. When I've seen him speak live at conferences, I immediately go and download whatever the presentation is as soon as possible and then end up incorporating many of his talking points or even some of the material on his slides into my own presentation material. Last week, Rand's highly shareable content actually came from a presentation that he was not able to share live at an event that he was supposed to be presenting at, and he was asked not to once the organizers got wind of his theme. Their loss is our gain, because his main thesis is that while the vast majority of digital marketing dollars are spent on Google and Facebook, success in marketing overall requires expanding beyond that duopoly. Fishkin posited, and really quite overtly, that the platforms are not marketers' friend. Other channels offer greater competitive advantages now, and thinking beyond Google and Facebook actually push Google and Facebook to be and to do better. And going a little bit deeper, Google and Facebook are built to create user addiction to their platforms. That's where the larger percentages of audiences still are, so we still need to figure out how to work with them, but he believes that there are no consequences when Google and Facebook mislead and deceive users. They benefit from the hard work and creativity of others while also spreading misinformation from others. The thing is, people actually get more information from Google and Facebook and Amazon than any other platform, especially consumers. The way people shop is profoundly changing, with traditional linear experiences being replaced by search and discovery of product, decision-making, even purchases made across digital platforms. Yes, brands should be looking beyond these big three, but the boundaries have blurred between brand building and commerce as consumers can now engage with and buy directly from the platforms and channels that they were previously leveraging for just brand building. Now, consumers and platforms are both changing at an accelerated rate, often in response to each other. It goes back and forth. Neither consumer expectations nor their behaviors can fit into neat little trackable silos anymore. Marketers are faced with the challenge of creating the right content formats that meet consumers where they are, and then constantly optimizing. Otherwise, their message will be lost and revenue opportunities will dissipate. Can brands be everywhere? Do they focus where they can get the most bang for their buck? The idea of creating and adapting content for any platform or language or stage of the purchase journey sounds like it would involve hundreds of millions of dollars. The challenge retailers face is in doing this within a budget, efficiently, and having the tools and systems in place to create, distribute, amplify, and then measure the ROI of that content, and then adjust accordingly based on this positive or negative feedback loop. The skill sets now required to do this will provide marketers with a plan that simplifies the digital landscape and prioritizes how they can most efficiently reach their customers across platforms. This needs to be based on an understanding of how consumers interact with each platform differently, and then how their expectations differ between platforms. Plus, it needs to include an understanding of each platform's algorithms to be able to optimize that performance on each platform. Content is experience and acts as the trigger that compels consumer action. So retailers need to adapt their content efficiently and at scale for each platform's way of working in any given geographical market and across the world. Essentially, they need the keys to unlock this potential of these platforms. And by taking more active control of how they engage with consumers across platforms, only then can brands reclaim their relationship with their customers. Something political. And one of the many horrors of the Trump administration was its deployment of ICE as a social and political weapon. As the goon squad for a racist, xenophobic executive branch over the past 4 years, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, ICE, became a symbol for a failure of our leadership with respect to a number of human rights concerns. However, since the Biden administration changed course earlier this year, the number of deportations carried out by ICE has dropped, and last month fell to the lowest monthly level on record. ICE deported only 2,900 immigrants in April, the first time the monthly figure has dipped below 3,000 in a very long time. It's down from the 6,000 during the final months of Trump's presidency per month, and an average of over 10,000 per month before the pandemic began. So Biden and the Department of Homeland Security team issued new rules to rein in ICE officers and are working to reform the agency and its reputation by focusing on criminals who pose public safety or national security threats. Republican governors from several states are suing the Biden administration to force a reversal of his ICE directives, which seems like a waste of time. This should not be conflated with the issues we have at the border, where floods of illegal immigrants are still attempting entry into the United States. Mitigation and removal are two very different issues, requiring different strategies, different tactics, different policies. However, one thing that does unite both in terms of understanding and then application is the need for humanitarian, fact-based approaches and solutions that put the well-being of individuals, people, human beings, back at the forefront. And something practical. Twice in the past 3 days, I heard someone say that they are afraid of cryptocurrency. But as I dug in deeper, it was really more of a fear of the unknown that was driving this. Bitcoin and Ethereum are now the two most widely known types of cryptocurrency, but the vast majority of people still don't really understand what it is. I wonder if people would be less intimidated if, rather than the currencies themselves, we focus on the technology that powers them. It's blockchain. Digital currency and blockchain technology, believe it or not, go back to the 1980s with the rise of the cypherpunk movement, which came about to protect and safeguard privacy in an increasingly digital world. With encrypted communication, people could make anonymous transactions online. And then in the late 1990s, the cypherpunks distributed remailer, or the CDR for short, became an anonymous, decentralized email system. This was like the beginning of it. But not long afterward came the first version of cryptocurrency, called at the time B-Money, great nickname, which worked similarly to how Bitcoin works today. All users of currency held a copy of the transaction log so that each payment was posted for all to potentially see and potentially approve or dispute. Back then, there was no centralized way, though, to maintain the accounts. 10 years later, Bitcoin emerged, becoming the world's first decentralized digital currency. Because it doesn't operate on any central registry, all the transactions that take place are made directly between the users, and it harnesses the power of that blockchain shared access. That's the way to think about it. So, simply put, blockchain is a secure and shared database that contains the transactions, but is accessible for all. It's not just about Bitcoin, though. The database is called a blockchain because the data is stored in sections, known as blocks. And these blocks are organized in a precise way that basically creates a chain of data. Now, in this increasingly decentralized framework, every transaction on the blockchain requires a digital signature that uses cryptography to authenticate transactions and ensure that everything that happened in the past cannot be tampered with. There's a record of it. So the flip side to this is that there is a cost, unfortunately, and that cost is energy. Blockchain transactions operate through a consensus protocol, which ensures that the blockchain always accurately represents every transaction made. Now, all the individual computers in the network align on one true version of the blockchain, and maintaining the crypto blockchain requires an enormous amount of actual physical energy in terms of running all these machines. Blockchains aren't just a database for digital currency, though. They can also be used to create legal contracts or relationships, transactions of any kind between multiple parties. Through the use of smart contracts, blockchains make it possible for decentralized autonomous organizations, also known as DAOs, to operate. Bitcoin and Ethereum are just two examples of this kind of organization. A DAO is essentially a company built out of computer code and managed by blockchain. It functions through a series of smart contracts that interact with each other in order to perform certain functions. Now, 20 plus years later, blockchains and cryptocurrency are proving that they are not fads. They are proliferating at a staggering rate. The uses and applications are transforming and revolutionizing commerce and finance. Every transaction requires a sender address and a receiver address, which can even be pseudonyms to make things safer. The fastest growing cryptocurrency over the last year or so has actually been Ethereum, which is an alternative to Bitcoin's somewhat limited technology capabilities. It's focused exclusively on money, though, whereas Bitcoin is, whereas Ethereum is a general purpose blockchain, which makes it much more versatile. In addition to cryptocurrency, Ethereum enables you to build such things as land title registries, rating systems, identity, virtual art, multimedia, NFTs. Ethereum is it's highly accessible and increasingly foundational for just many new platforms that we're working with in technology. And with its adaptable blockchain, it's already becoming a preferred digital payment method across a number of different types of industries. It took some time, but Ethereum's developers have finally made inroads for corporate and commercial use. And you're going to begin seeing it, and it's going to become mainstream, and you're going to have to get comfortable with it. With decentralization comes questions about governance and risk and threat control. Yes, blockchain can be used for illegal activity, but so can any currency. It can be laundered, which could result in some governments, though, rethinking or even imposing heavy regulations or overtly outlawing blockchain technology. But that would be a huge mistake and probably not legal in the long run. But the fact remains that blockchains have the potential to change our world as profoundly as the internet did and the printing press did long before that. And as it stands now, Ethereum could be the blockchain of the future, since it's by far the most advanced technology we've seen to date. So learn more and get comfortable with it.